What's up, you guys? It's Sarah at carnivore.yogi on Instagram. Thank you so much for coming back to my YouTube channel and clicking on today's video. In this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about how I track my macros on a carnivore diet. I'm going to share with you the app that I use, the tools that I use, and it's a little bit different when it comes to carnivore diet. It's not as easy as I think a keto diet because it's basically you're tracking your meat and fat, right? Some of you guys, I eat egg yolks and butter and some other things, but it's not quite as easy as if like taking a cup of, lentils or a cup of rice. It's a little different because meat is going to vary from cut to cut. So I'm going to talk about how I overcome that obstacle. I'll talk to you about why you may want to consider this, some adaptations your body may have made, and why you're maybe not seeing progress and all that. So you'll want to watch the whole video. So before I jump into any of that, my typical disclaimer, I am not a doctor, nutritionist, expert, any of that stuff. So I'm just sharing my journey and my experience with you guys in the hope that it will help you. And honestly, one of the reasons, among many reasons, I was attracted to carnivore is that a lot of people were saying that they were eating this way and they were doing absolutely zero tracking and it was working great. And that sounded really awesome to me. Unfortunately, after about a year and a half, I was not reaching my goals and I actually had started to see the scale go up. So that's when I decided, a year and a half in here. So I don't recommend you just jump right into carnivore and start tracking. I don't think that's going to be helpful for a lot of people. But after a year and a half, I was like, okay, it's time for me to just see what's coming in, what's going out. Let's put it down on paper. Let's really look at it. And there are a couple of things I want to mention here when it comes to carnivore diet or keto diet. It's going to be a different way that your body is metabolizing energy. So if you're in a ketone metabolism, there's scientific evidence that shows you can burn anywhere from 100 to 300 calories more per day. A calorie is just a unit of energy, so don't get triggered by the word calories. I know, I know it's like not everything, but it's something you got to take into account. And we also need to take into account the thermic effect of food. So protein is going to cost your body a little bit more in terms of burning energy. So those are a couple things that are a little different that cause the carnivore diet to be different on your metabolism than just a regular standard American diet. So what I found with a carnivore diet is I can actually eat more quote unquote calories eating this way than I can when I'm eating a carbohydrate based diet. So here's the thing, the reasons why you may want to take a step back and track. Number one, if you come to the carnivore diet and you have a lot of pre-existing metabolic downregulation, if your thyroid's not operating properly, and I will link some tests below for thyroid, for sex hormones. I always think it's important that people have the facts going in, because if your thyroid is downregulated, if your T3 is low, or any thyroid marker is off, it could account for 300 calories a day that your body won't burn. So, before you start going in here and freaking out, worrying about calories, energy in, energy out, make sure that your metabolism is functioning healthy by having a healthy thyroid gland and having a healthy sex hormone panel. Now for me, when I had a panel done in January, my thyroid and my sex hormones, I was low on everything. My T3 was low, my sex hormones were low. So at that point, I decided I was going to go 6 months and really try to eat in a surplus as well as switch to a high-fat carnivore diet. So I did gain weight during that 6-month period, but I was okay with it because I knew that my thyroid was downregulated, my sex hormones were downregulated, and I needed to fix that. So for me, what that meant is like no more fasting, eating in a little bit of a surplus and eating a high-fat diet, which did cause my body to gain some fat. 6 months in, my thyroid's in great shape, my sex hormones are in great shape, I'm having a cycle, I'm ovulating every month. So I was like, okay, it's time for me to start tracking and start trying to pay attention to this stuff. So if you go into this way of eating, you definitely want to get those blood panels checked out first, just to make sure, because if you do have a downregulated thyroid, you're not going to be able to eat as much and you may find yourself gaining weight. So skip the headache, and I don't really think this headache, it's kind of fun, geeky, nerdy stuff for me to do, but you can skip all that and go ahead and get tested. And the way I fixed it, again, you want to work with your doctor. I'm not a doctor or an expert or anything, but the way I fixed it was to quit all fasting, eat within waking up, 30 minutes of waking up, and eat a little bit more in a surplus for 6 months and just be okay with gaining some weight, which is hard for most people, especially as a woman when you've really wanted to stay lower body weight. But you know what? I'm feeling really well now. So this is what I'm doing with tracking. The other thing is, once I decided, all right, I'm not going to eat in a surplus anymore, I was like, well, what do I eat? Like, how much do I actually need to keep my weight stable, you know, and to stop this weight gain train, right? So that's the other reason I started tracking. I did a whole video about how I figured out my fat loss macros, and I will do a little eye up here in the corner, so you can go ahead and just check that out if you're wanting to figure out your fat loss macros. So, but let's get into tracking and how I'm doing that. So I am using the exact same app. Consistency is going to be the key here. So if you're going to track, you want to be consistent across the board. Number one, I had this question come up, do I track bone broth? Do I track meat broth? Do I track collagen? Yes. If it goes in your mouth, you track it, right? And you want to use the same exact app every single time. So I personally use the Carb Manager app. I have some friends that use MyFitnessPal, and it's just a matter of preference. Just use the same app every single time. Within that app, you're going to create favorites. So I have a favorite for my rendered beef suet. I just call it beef tallow, right? And I have that saved in my favorites. So every time I eat that, I measure out 1 tablespoon. Every time I eat that, the same thing, I'm going to put that into my calculator. Now, the caloric value may be wrong. If we want to get down into nuts and bolts, the caloric value of the beef tallow or the rendered beef suet in my app could be inaccurate. However, I'm tracking that exact same data, and for those 1 tablespoon or 3 tablespoons, however much I'm eating, I'm tracking that same exact data point every single time. So there's going to be consistency. It may not be, X amount of calories completely accurate, but it's going to be the same thing every single time. Does that make sense? Comment below if it doesn't make sense. I'm hoping it does. Same thing with cuts of meat. Now, a grass-fed ribeye or a grass-finished ribeye is going to be different than a grain-finished ribeye. So I actually do have a grass-finished ribeye in my favorites and a grain-finished ribeye. One's going to be fattier than the other. And when I'm measuring protein or your meat, I am more concerned with the protein content of how many grams per protein a 3-ounce piece of meat is. I'm more concerned with that. So just put your values in there, save them. The other thing is, I always measure things cooked. I don't measure things raw. Neither one is right or wrong, but just decide what it is that you're going to do, because it's across the board. So you're not going to have these exact data points. I think that the reason why calories in, calories out is kind of an inaccurate system. Well, there's a lot of reasons why I think it's inaccurate, but I think you can look at things as a whole. So you're going to measure your ribeyes like, oh, this one looks a little bit fattier, so I'm going to go with the grain finished ribeye for this data point today. And just keep those favorites in there, and you can kind of eyeball, but it doesn't have to be exactly precise. So that being said, I have a food scale that I utilize every single day to, again, measure out those portions of meat and portions of fat that I eat. Egg yolks also are going to be different. I mean, sometimes I crack an egg yolk and I'm like, that thing is freaking tiny. So you're always going to use your app, and Carb Manager app, when you go to egg yolk, it'll have small, medium, or large, and I just try to go by that, right? Again, it's not going to be 100% accurate. I can't say I ate 2,177 calories today and I ate 2,200. You're not going to get like that specific, but you can go in and get a really good range. The thing is, you're not going to eat the same exact amount of food every single day. Some days you're going to go out and do a ton of activity. Some days you're going to be a little bit more relaxed and lay around the house. So you're going to eat different from day to day. You just want to figure out the range of what you're eating. When I started tracking, the first week that I tracked, I was like shocked at the difference of one day I actually ate 3,000 quote unquote calories. Again, I don't like to use the word calories because it's energy. It behaves a little bit differently when you're doing a ketogenic way of eating. However, it is what it is, right? And then one day that week I did like 1,800 calories. One day I did 1,500. It's like it's all across the board. So I talk more about that in my video of how I figured out my fat loss macros, but it's just a really good way to figure out where you are. And if you're not meeting your goals, like I mentioned, the Instagram post that I put out there is like, if your bank account is constantly overdrawn, you're running out of money, it's a good time to create a budget. So do I think that people need to track long term or forever? No, probably not. But it's something that's helpful to bring in from time to time. So again, use the same exact app every single time. Save your favorites. With your meat, it's not going to be 100% accurate. Just know that. But you can kind of eyeball and say, okay, this is a fattier ribeye, this is a leaner ribeye. It's grass finished versus grain finished. This is, you know, you can be accurate to a point and then save those as your favorites so that every time you're tracking, every day you're tracking, you're gonna use that same sort of data point to plug in there to that calculator, so you're getting a little bit more of an accurate range. And again, it's a range, so don't drive yourself crazy down to the calorie, you know, unit of energy, but use it as information, and then use your body's feedback. So your symptoms, how do I feel, how am I sleeping, you know, how are my sex hormones doing, all that stuff as data, as information to continue moving forward in your journey. So I hope that this was helpful, guys. Please comment below if you need clarification on anything. I will do my best to answer your comments. But again, I hope it was helpful, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.